Hello, welcome back to I Got Board Game.
Board
I got
game.
board
Board
game.
game.
I am Ben,
I'm John.
and today we are here with a special video, special list. Today we are doing a top 5 list, and specifically, we'll be going over both of our top 5 two-player games. So both of our just two people, only two,
Just two.
John and me.
And John. Wait, me and Ben.
You and yourself. Anyways, so just to clarify, we both put together our own top 5 lists. So we don't know what's on each other's list right now. But the strict rule we tried to keep to for this video was strictly two-player games. So that's basically according to Board Game Geek, that lists a game as 2 players. And so it's not going to be games that are just like best at 2 players or feel great at 2 players. It's very strictly like the max capacity is 2 players, if not only 2 players. And so that's what you can expect from our lists, games that are for just 2 players. And what that means, what I noticed that means is none of these will also be co-op games, which are often great with 2 players, but they're also obviously made almost all the time for more than 2 players since it's cooperative. And so being a list of strictly 2-player games, pretty much none of them will be or could possibly be co-op games.
No
Very
pandemic
rare.
for you, Ben.
And so I think that's all we're gonna say about the restrictions we went with, just 2-player games. And so we'll get into it by first sharing both of our runner-ups, basically our number 6, the ones that were very close to making it to the top 5 for us, but just didn't make it. And so my number 6, if you will, the runner-up, let me get my background ready. Oh man.
Number 6.
Number 6 is.
Whoa.
Did it work?
Yeah, there's a giant fox behind you.
And I'll show it. Fox in the Forest, The Fox in the Forest, by Renegade Games. Ooh. And so this was my runner-up. I think ultimately because it's a game that I really like teaching or introducing to someone else as a strictly 2-player game, but it was very clever in how it did trick taking just for 2 players, which is something you don't often hear about happening in a game, right? Trick taking games are usually with multiple players, and it's all about usually winning as many tricks as you can. And so to have a game where it's not necessarily about winning all the tricks that you can, and it's about just only 2 players back and forth, it makes each trick, each round that you're playing very engaging and gets you thinking constantly. But it is a light game. It is just this small box, and basically it's just a card game, and the art's really nice. It has good artwork and it's very clean, has good negative space on it. And so my runner-up, The Fox in the Forest.
Nice. Yeah. And so for me, my runner-up game, drumroll,
6
is. Oh, I guess the picture's Patchwork. You can see Patchwork behind me, and we've done a review on Patchwork before in the past. It's my runner-up game, kind of in a similar vein of what Ben was saying. It's a lighter game for people to play. It's very easy to get into. The reason, that's effectively the reason why I had a lot of difficulty in deciding on this one specifically, because it is a great game. I enjoy playing it a lot. I've recently invited and got my wife to learn how to play the game, and we played it a few times now at this point. It's a great game in that way, but compared to the other games, which we'll be getting into, it just didn't quite make it into my top 5, because ultimately it is, what other games do I enjoy playing more or would be more interested in playing on a regular basis than purely, maybe this game. But this is a very close one. Ben and I were talking about it right before here. I was back and forthing, and I had actually just swapped it right before we started. So That's how close this one was to being in my top 5.
And so those are our runner-ups. So going on to our actual top 5s now, the ones that actually made it up there. Top 5 2-player games, starting with. Let me share this. Let me share this.
With.
Oh no. Okay, here we go. Number 5.
Number 5.
5.
5.
So my number 5 is, let me get it ready. Raptor. I have it. Raptor. Very nice artwork by, I believe, Vincent Dutrait. Very recognizable art style on the front. And so Raptor is a game where one team is playing the raptors, or like the mama raptor with the baby raptors trying to escape. And then the other person is playing the scientists. And this one is very clever in that they both sides play slightly differently. You could almost call it an asymmetric game, but I think overall it's still, there's a lot of things that are shared, so it's not like that distinct, but the actions are, the options are different because raptors can do different things from humans. But I think one of the main mechanics being that you're playing your numbered cards simultaneously. So you're both kind of secretly choosing and playing cards. And then one player is doing the ability on one of their cards. And then the other player is getting a number of generic actions equal to the difference in the number of cards, like a 4 and a 9 card. Then that player would get 5 actions. I think that constantly keeps the tension in the game, where you're always trying to figure out what is the other player going to play now. You can start to see cards they already played, since they only have those cards 1 through 9, and they are one-time use until they get all their cards back in their hand. And so, yeah, there's always that kind of heavy tension. And I think ultimately this one beat out my runner-up, the Fox and the Forest, because I think the theme to the game really kind of draws you into what you're doing, where the Fox and the Forest is ultimately an abstract game as a trick-taking game. This one, with its own board and its little raptor pieces and scientist miniatures, and the different abilities, like trying to tranquilize the mama raptor while the mama raptor's hiding in bushes and jumping out at the scientists, like all of that seems more thematic. And I think it has like that tension, but then that theme with it. And so that's why it made it into my number 5.
Number 5. So my number 5 is going to be super different, and nobody's ever heard of this game before because we literally didn't talk about it like not even 5 minutes ago. The Fox in the Forest.
The Fox in the Forest. Okay.
So Ben's already talked about this game. I don't really have that much more to say. I think what Ben had highlighted, I enjoyed trick-taking games a lot personally. I've always enjoyed playing them. I grew up playing Hearts on the computer for a lot, and then I played Hearts here and there growing up with other people. And I think just the concept of making a 2-player game, a trick-taking game, and then creating this kind of conceptual idea of, as Ben has mentioned, different ways of trying to win and trying to achieve certain objectives, not strictly as what most traditional trick-taking games are, which is usually just win as many tricks as you can, or like win or not win as many as you can, depending on the style of the game. So the Fox and the Forest being a trick-taking game with only 2 people, because usually trick-taking games require 4 people in them because you need a balanced number of players, because they're always based on a deck of 52 cards, like your standard poker set of cards, playing cards. So that's why I really enjoyed the Fox and the Forest as a game. And as Ben has mentioned, very easy to learn. It doesn't take a lot. The cards are very self-explanatory, so it's great to just jump right in and teach people how to play. So.
Very nice. So moving on to our number 4. So my number 4 is, let me get it here. My number 4 is a game we reviewed. Seven Wonders Duel.
Ding.
So Seven Wonders Duel is the 2-player version of Seven Wonders, which came out years after the original. But Seven Wonders itself is obviously a really big game, gateway game in the industry that can play up to 7 players. This specifically made it just only for 2 players. And I think even though it has those Seven Wonders drafting as the main mechanism still, the way it sets it up as kind of a, in a sense, like a pyramid grid of cards over the ages that then both players are going back and forth trying to decide whether they're going to purchase those cards and add them to their empire or not. It was a clever way of just switching up drafting, which I actually like drafting a lot. And I think, but it's often done very kind of simply, like in Seven Wonders or other games where it's just, you have a hand of cards, choose one and pass it. But it's like, that would have maybe been too boring if it's just 2 players doing it. Mm-hmm. So kind of having that innovation of the pyramid that kind of limits your options of cards that you can draft out of each turn, made it have more tension, more variety, because, you know, the cards are randomly set up. And so that also changes with each game. And so I think it does that drafting well, and it keeps that kind of excitement of going back and forth with someone, always kind of just only having that one other person to compete with when you're drafting. And so trying to plan that way, and also like the different ways of winning. There's basically the 3 ways of winning, of collecting different things, military, science, or just points. Like that also keeps both players kind of thinking like, oh, which way do I need to go now? Do I need to go a certain way just to make sure the other player doesn't win this way? Or can I push in another way and like surprise them that way? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, having those 3 victory conditions also keeps you on your feet. And so, and it plays so well. Like, I think people will come into it seeing that like, oh, it might have like Seven Wonders level of like cards, like amounts of cards and different kinds of things you can buy. But in including symbolism and the way it does the symbolism, you just teach it once and then it makes sense how to read the cards. And so I think it's surprisingly easy to catch onto, but has quite a bit of weight as a drafting game. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, Seven Wonders Duel, also great art. I really do like some of the art, this kind of these different empires from back then. And so, wow, really great game. And you can even check out our previous review for it. Mm-hmm. My number 4, Seven Wonders Duel.
Very nice. Very nice. So my number 4 game, Deviation. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh,
different game. And mine is Pixel Tactics.
Of course.
Xbox. But yes, Pixel Tactics is my number 4 game, published by Level 99 or developed by Level 99 Games. Effectively what this game is, it's a 2-player versus game in which you have a grid of like a 3x3 grid, and you actually play the game in 3 major rounds. And effectively what you're doing is every round you'll take out of your deck of cards, deck of characters that you have, you're going to select one of them to be your commander or champion for that round. And the cool thing is the artwork or the characters in this series, all of these characters are unique, right? So that's one of the special things about Level 99. Whenever they create their IPs, they have unique and individual characters, and they actually cross between their other kind of board games that they've made. So the development of their cast of characters is part of a larger repertoire of characters that they have throughout. And so when you choose those commander characters, they are unique and they have very special abilities that affect your entire board as you play through the whole game. And then the way that the grid is set up is that you have a front line, you've got your middle, like the Vanguard, I think is the front line, you've got your middle line, and then you've got your back line, which is kind of your support or ranged line. And you're going to be, over the course of the game, you're going to be either playing new characters out to be your army to fight against the opposing enemy army and the opposing commander, or you actually utilize these characters as like one-time special benefits or bonuses that will do kind of an extra powerful effect, but you lose it, right? Or you use it up for that round. And so you play through the game. Each character has a certain amount of life points. And then when you beat them, then, you know, you gain a victory. And so you continue if you win with the commander that you had. And then the opposing player has to choose a new commander. And then you fight again for another round. It's usually, I believe, a best out of 3 for the game. But I love this game a lot because of the variety within it. I think in the base game, there's like, I think 16 to like 32 different characters that are created. And because you have to shuffle the decks and you share it between or like each player has their own set. And it's ultimately the same characters, but you're going to be choosing different ones as you're playing through. So the way that you utilize the characters, the way you're drawing your characters are going to be different. And this game had like 7 expansions, I think, if I remember, like 6 or 7 expansions afterward that just added more characters, a larger cast of characters into it that just makes the game so much more interesting and has so much more replayability just because the way that you decide to use your characters can be different every time you play. Yeah. I love this game. I think it's great. I would say the only difficult thing is it is a bit of a learning curve because it's very tactical, very strategic. And there are certain cards that explicitly need you to know the names of certain character cards to call out to do a special ability, which is really powerful. But if you don't know all the cards, it takes a bit to learn the game or a bit to be able to fully and effectively utilize certain characters. But generally speaking, otherwise, it's a great game and why it's my number 4.
And yeah, and I would just point out that the image he's showing is Pixel Tactics Deluxe, which is kind of the big box version of it that came later. But the game is actually very simple to jump in and even pick up in like a small tuck box form, basically kind of the size of the Fox in the Forest box we were showing, where it's just Pixel Tactics 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can just buy any of single one of those and you'll be able to play the game.
That's right.
So then moving on to our number 3. So my number 3, and I hope the image will fit. Since Sean mentioned level 99 games. BattleCon. And so my image right now in the background is, as you can see on the side, Devastation of Endings. And I'm only showing this image because that's actually the box I started with, which is actually maybe one of the bigger boxes or the biggest one available with tons of characters. I forgot how many, 20 to 30 characters, something like that. But the very first one was actually called BattleCon War of Endings, all set in this Endings world that level 99 games made. And this is the revised edition. So this is what the one you'll see in stores looks like now. The art got a lot better. They refined some of the rules and stuff like that. But this whole series, the BattleCon series, is basically what my number 3 is. Has a handful of expansions, and I believe they're all standalone. So whatever set you can find, I think it comes with like the board and the characters in that specific set, and you can just play with whatever there. It's just if you have multiple sets, then you just have more characters you can choose from and play with each other. And so there's War of Endings, like the first one. I believe Devastation was maybe the second. And there's also like Trials of Endings, Fate of Endings. And so just different sets. And so this is kind of a standard one where you can see it has these characters. And I love when they have this artist do their anime characters. And these are all original characters, like John was explaining with Pixel Tactics. And actually, I think these characters are in Pixel Tactics.
They are the same characters.
And so it's kind of, it was really cool back then when John and I were getting into Pixel Tactics and even BattleCon, seeing like, oh, they took these characters, pixelized them, chibied them, and put them in a completely different game system. And I think that was so brilliant by Level 99 Games. But BattleCon itself is, I always introduced it as a fighting video game into a board game. And this is probably the best example I can think of a game that does that. Because it really is both of you choose one of the characters. Each character has some generic cards, and then there's specific cards. And then specifically with BattleCon, the clever mechanic was both players are playing cards at the same time and revealing them at the same time to basically do your actions like in a fighting video game. Like if you're trying to dash towards someone and the other player is like jumping to attack in a certain way. And then even with that, there is a lot of stuff that you can end up thinking about, because it's not just revealing one card, which is like a jump or a dash, but it's combining two cards, right? Some kind of attack with some kind of, in a sense, modifier. Like it could be like dashing fireball or something like that. And so you have these different kinds of combinations that then will determine how fast your character is attacking or moving, how powerful it is, and the range of their attack, which is all stuff you might not think too much about when you're actually playing a fighting video game. But it makes sense that those are all there, and it got translated into this kind of board game version. And then there's even like super moves that you can do if you can try to land it. And so it's just a really cool feeling experience where you have that much variety in how you can kind of even imagine and see your characters moving in a fighting game way. But then like as a board game, you're constantly trying to read the other person's mind to figure out how are they going to attack or dodge or try to block me right now? And can I, get around that or kind of feint and trick them? And so, yeah, it feels so great. And then I think the one last thing is in BattleCon, the characters feel so different. Like there's so many characters through the whole series. Like I actually do have all of them in two very big boxes here, which came out to, I think, a total of like 100 characters, 100 unique characters that they did over the whole series. But then, yeah, they all, from what I played, I haven't played all of them, but I played a lot of them.
Played most of them. We played.
Yeah. Like in Devastation, and we tried some of the other sets at different points. They are so unique where, you could have basic ones that are like faster moving characters, or, their attacks have more speed, so they might hit sooner, but hit weaker, to characters who create like portals that then make their attacks like closer distance to characters, because they're kind of like, warped or like warp portals or stuff through space. And then you have characters who have little minions or little robots that provide bonuses, characters who can like sacrifice life to kind of go all out, all kinds of things you can imagine in like fighting games and even like anime stuff. So it's an amazing feat how creative they got with all the characters. So yes, BattleCon, the whole series, my number 3.
Nice. So my number 3, another game that you guys have never heard of, is Seven Wonders Duel. So I placed it higher than Ben. I don't have too many more things to add. Ben covered a lot of it already. I would say the additional pieces that I think I really appreciate and like about it is that fact, the ability for them to have condensed the experience of Seven Wonders into a 2-player game. And I think that is something that is actually very difficult to do, where it's not just playing Seven Wonders, like the big board game, which is a big drafting game, as Ben had mentioned. It is actually taking all of the elements of that game and condensing it in a way that is effective and balanced for a fully 2-player experience, right? Where you might think, how do you balance this ability for gathering all of, like we were saying, the win conditions, the 3 win conditions in a normal Seven Wonders game? You're competing against kind of the different players that are next to you, right? With like the military that's affected. You get affected by how much military you have and compared to your opponents to your left and your right. How do you do that in a 2-player balance style? Or like gathering the sciences, as we mentioned, from a drafting standpoint. How do you ensure that I feel like I have a selection, like a drafting game, yet it's not so imbalanced because you already have all the cards and you see exactly everything that you can choose. And I think that's one of the cool things about the layout, as Ben was mentioning. There's like a few different grid styles, like a pyramid style and a couple other styles. But the other cool thing about it, it's not just like all of these cards that are face down or all the cards are face up, but it's actually a layering approach in which they did. Some of the cards are face up, so you can see what's coming up in the board, and some of them are face down, so you won't know until you get to that layer to reveal. So it gives both players some information, but there's always this element of hidden information that's included in the game too. So it gives you that kind of strategic experience of, well, a player who can just think a lot more than I can is just going to do better because they can see everything. You have that element of there's just going to be some stuff that you just don't know, and that's okay. That's part of the experience. And I think balancing all of those pieces together and making it into a fun and like giving you that experience as a 2-player game still, and not needing more players to play the game when you're playing the larger the main board game version of this is just a really awesome feat for them to have done. And it makes for a great 2-player experience, as Ben said. Very easy to learn, and it doesn't take up a lot of space, which is also really convenient.
Okay, nice. And so going on to our number 2. Two
away from, or 1 away from 1.
Number 2. My number 2 is kind of following this level 99 stuff. Exceed. Nice. Exceed. Oh man, I love this picture in the background I have right now. This is the box I chose to show. But I think, and specifically, these are from basically season 2 of this game series. And so similar to BattleCon, this is a fighting game into a board game, or more specifically, more of a card game format, which makes it then smaller. So taking up less space, having fewer components. But then also, I think I like showing season 2 because I love how they jump to this art style. But there are various seasons. They will all basically play the same, which I think is kind of an advantage that I give to Exceed over BattleCon, right? They're both fighting games from Level 99 Games, but I think Exceed is simpler and so easier to pick up, and not necessarily, if you're playing with another person who, tends to think a lot of strategy stuff, they won't get bogged down by all their choices. And so where in Exceed, instead of having like your player and then your own deck of generic and special cards that you pair up each time to show, for all the Exceed games, you choose a character and they just have their own deck. And then with that deck, you're just playing one card at a time. And so it's faster in that way, where you don't always have to think of pairing the cards. But I think even in kind of condensing or streamlining the BattleCon experience into this kind of card game system, it still captures that feel of a fighting game while also being fast, right? Fast, and the characters also do feel unique. And so Exceed has had, I think, 5 seasons so far. I did an unboxing of the latest one before for the BlazBlue Exceed. And so that was all kind of exciting seeing over the years where, as Exceed was doing well, Level 99 got to get licenses to other properties to put into this Exceed fighting system. And so the original one, season 1, that you could probably still find now was with Red Horizon Characters, which is a Japanese fighting game. Season 2, which is when they really bumped up the production and the art style, which I love this kind of anime art style. This is from their original property, Seventh Cross. So all these characters are their original characters. And then you have Street Fighter characters for season 3, and Shovel Knight for season 4, and BlazBlue for season 5. So, you have those options currently for whatever theme you like, whichever of those fighting or video game worlds that you enjoy seeing. You can choose those characters to fight each other. But I think overall, like I mentioned, what puts Exceed above BattleCon is just the speed and streamlining it down to just the single card play each turn. It goes faster that way, and thus is easier to teach to people. So pretty close, but I think I always kind of end up choosing Exceed over BattleCon. So yeah, my number 2, Exceed.
Very nice. All right, a departure. Woo!
Nah, I don't think so. I'm waiting for Level 99 games still from you.
A Level 99 game. So my number 2 game here is a game that we recently played together called Fog of Love.
Oh man.
This doesn't have the full view of it. There's like a guy and a girl on the side.
Yeah. And the full game is called Fog of Love.
And it's called Fog of Love. So this game is a 2-player romantic comedy style game, is what they call it, I think. But it's basically it's a board game that does a romantic, is basically a romance simulator. And what you do is you play as a couple, and what you're doing is you're going to be going through a series or some kind of a scenario. Usually it's some setup of like your high school sweethearts, or it could be that you're meeting for the first time after a Saturday morning chat, coffee chat with a person, and things like that. And so the effective premise of the game is, as you're going to be playing through, you and the partner that you're playing with, you're going to be role playing as this couple, and you're going to be put into a lot of different situations. I think the 3 types of situations that can come up are sweet, serious situations, and dramatic or drama can happen. And each of those, it's kind of like different levels of tension or different levels of things that, if you're in a relationship or you watch shows or you just know what relationships are like or about, or you've seen people who are in relationships, it puts you in these circumstances and scenarios in which you as the character, or you as the person, will need to respond in some capacity or in some way to the event or the situation placed before you. And I think that's a really clever part about this game, is that it's not just like you see this card and there's only one selection that you make. There's a series of choices that you can make. I think up to 4 decisions that you have to make within a card or within an event that you respond to. And the other special and important thing is, like, you have to remember, it's not you. You are role playing, and you're playing as a particular character who's going to have specific needs, specific interests, and specific things that you're trying to aim for, or you're trying to get to achieve kind of satisfaction and happiness in your relationship with the person. And I think that's also the really special and important thing about this game, is that as you play through the game, there's what's called the destiny card. So there's usually 4 cards, I believe, that are dealt to you at the beginning of a game. And it's kind of deciding what is the destiny that you ultimately want to have with the other player. And it could be something as like, I want to be true love partners, and I want to commit everything, and their happiness is my happiness. So we're going to try to do everything you can. So you have to do a certain thing. You have to earn a certain level of kind of satisfaction, not just for yourself, but kind of your partner too, because that's your true destiny, is what you feel like as a partner. But the catch is that the other player also has their own destiny cards, and their destinies may not line up with the destiny that you want to have. And that's where it becomes a really fun and a really interesting experience, because you can start seeing how the other player is playing, and you're like, Ben, why are you not, helping me out in this? I thought we were on the same page here. Why did you respond to your in-laws when we were meeting them for the first time, or something like that? Or one time we got like, we were in a situation, and Ben was like, my character's mad at you for this really stupid reason, and he had to make up the reason for me. And so it gives you a lot of options and a lot of opportunities to just kind of play around and play as these characters and explore different dynamics and different situations that maybe normally you would not do, but being in this game format and kind of giving you the prompts and giving you this kind of avenue in the space to really try exploring and really try to see, what is it like to be like somebody else? Woo! And how does their story unfold? Woo! So this game is great. I've actually only played the introduction of the game. Oh, and that's another thing that's really great about this game. It has an amazing tutorial process that literally walks you from start to end of the tutorial situation and scenario when you open the box. So if you buy this game for the first time, it fully walks you through the entire process. It has a full guidance on what you can do. You can make your own selections however you want, but it does curate the experience to allow you to really know what you're doing and how to do and how to choose, or like how to go through the game over time. And you can always reset it if you need to. So if you're teaching somebody else for the first time, or you're getting a new group of people to play, so you don't even have to play, you can watch them play it, you can set up the experience so that they can walk themselves through and they can see, you yourself go through. And that's also the other great thing about this game, is that we played it just one-on-one together, but we're fairly certain that this is also a great experience to watch other people play, because you get to see how they react, you get to see the kinds of choices, and it's kind of like watching a romantic, drama or romantic comedy or something. You're actually seeing, what are people doing? What are they talking about? How are they going to react? He said no, why? Something like that. Or why did she leave him? Why did she leave him hanging? So it's a great experience. So that's why for this game, it's my number 2. It's a really, really awesome game. I'm excited to play it another time once we get a chance to play it.
Nice. Fog of Love. Oh, man. High up there.
Mm-hmm.
So now moving on to finally number one. So our top 2-player specific games.
Mm-hmm.
But mine, I do have to show it in the background because I don't actually have the box for it anymore. But my number 1 2-player game is, come on, I hope it shows the whole thing. Netrunner. Let me, yes, that artwork. That artwork's so cool. And so this is the artwork for the original version of the game. And sadly, I would have to tell you that this game is dead. It's officially not being made anymore, not being supported by the company Fantasy Flight anymore. But they did, before it died a few years ago, they did try to reboot it with a second edition, like a revised edition, trying to clean up the rules, stuff that got convoluted over time as the game kept growing. And let me see if I can show the picture of, so this is what you would find in stores if you can find it anymore, which I think you could maybe still find it. It's just, there's no more tournaments or stuff for you to go to for this game, and no more expansion packs for it. But Android Netrunner specifically was a remake of the original game Netrunner by Richard Garfield, not the actor. Richard Garfield, big name in the board game industry, most well known for creating Magic: The Gathering originally. And so Netrunner was another really old project of his that eventually got put into this Android universe, which was a kind of futuristic cyberpunk world that Fantasy Flight games own. And so that's why it's called Android Netrunner. But why this is my number 1 2-player game, and I think this is actually the one that probably I knew pretty quickly that it's just got to be number 1, because it's the first asymmetrical game I've played, which I believe we also explained in our other video, right, on what is an asymmetrical game. But Netrunner was the first time I had heard of that term, and I just got it to try it out, and it was pretty convoluted to learn. So that is a warning. It is basically has the weight of those kind of trading card games like Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, but maybe even to another level, just because it's an asymmetrical game, meaning that it's a game where both players play differently, like very differently from each other, where one player is always the corporation and one player is the runner. And it's basically, the whole idea is, in this future, you have runners or hackers trying to take down the big corporations that are maybe doing shady things or corrupt in different ways. And so in setting each game up that way, each player then will have their own deck that they made beforehand to be a runner deck or a corporation deck. And so when you're playing like at tournaments before, you would actually have to play 2 games to kind of get your score, because you'd have your own runner deck and your own corporation deck. You'd have to play 1 game as runner, 1 game as your corporation. But then it's also asymmetrical because the runner are basically, their cards will never be in a corporation player's deck, and vice versa, because they're such different entities and they are trying to accomplish different things. And so that's where it has that kind of collectible card game feel, where there's just so many cards out there that you can choose to put in your deck. and lots of expansions, like a lot of expansions over the years that Netrunner was out. But then it also has like helpful rules to kind of limit what you can actually make with your deck. You can't just put any runner cards you want and make a huge giant deck. But you choose actually your identity, which is actually your character. So you're actually a specific character, which has its own few stats on like how many cards it needs in their deck, what special ability they have. And the same thing with the corporation. You have different corporations you can choose from, corporation identities, and they all fall into their own factions. So they might have their own specialty where, Jinteki was kind of this Japanese futuristic corporation that did a lot of cloning. So their cards are more about that, where then you have Hospiroid, which is about like androids or bioroids. And so each faction has their own emphasis too. Runners have like Shapers, which are about creating strong hacking programs and then, trying to hack into the corporation. Or you also have the Criminals, which are just trying to be as quick and get in and get out as often as they can. And so, yeah, you're just creating these decks separately. And then you're playing in this way where the runner's actions are about getting in and breaking through the defense systems of the corporations, where then the corporation is playing that kind of mind game against the runner player of, setting up different servers or basically cards where they might be hiding their secret agendas or might just be hiding company assets. And they're trying to put defense programs in front of these that make it harder for the runner to access them. So there's all these kind of key terms that I'm using that I think people might not like because it makes the game sound more convoluted. But I think the terms are very easy to understand, but in saying it out like I just did, it makes it seem very thematic. And I like that feel. It felt so thematic when you're playing. And ultimately that asymmetric feel worked really well for a competitive feeling card game, right? And so that was very impressive. And so my number one is Android Netrunner by Fantasy Flight Games.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah. And so for me, my number one top game of 2-player only games is chess. Just kidding.
I knew it.
Of course, Ben knew this. So Ben's talked about this game already in extensive detail for us. I'm not going to rehash everything that he talked about. I think it's just an amazing universe that the Level 99, team had put together and created. The reason why I actually have this over Exceed personally is while I do agree with Ben 100% about the fact that Exceed is actually a lot easier to get into. It's a much simpler design. There is still a feeling that this game really captures more of the true kind of fighting game, video game fighting game experience more in depth in this style than the Exceed style, which again, it's not a bad thing, right? It's just, they're just different in that perspective. And I appreciate this one more. As we said, there's so many different characters, and the fact that every character feels so unique and so specific on how they do things, and the way that you can combine the basic cards and the basic actions into their specialized skills and abilities. And the cool thing is those skills and abilities are different between every single character, and it's not like every character has like 5 special unique skills or abilities. Some characters have like 15, some characters have 3, and that's all they have. They don't have more than that, but it's the way that the characters activate, the ways that the characters play, that really makes you feel like you're playing a very specialized character. That if you were to play a 2-player fighting game like Street Fighter or BlazBlue or Tekken or any of those kinds of games, when you play them, that when you choose a particular character in they have a very particular style. They have a very unique way of playing the game, and they have a way of utilizing and activating their special abilities or their special moves in order to do the combos or to do the actions and attacks that character is specialized for. And that's how they fight and that's how they play. This game really captures that feeling of being those specialized, being those unique characters in the space. And it is a board, right? Like you have the grid of, I think it's a board of, one, two, three, like 8 or 9 slots in which your characters are going to be moving around over the course of the game. And your characters, depending on where they're positioned, how you're moving them around, it gives you that feeling of actually moving around in that space. And then I think the other really cool, let me think. Oh man, I just love this game so much. There's so many great things about it. Yeah, and like with the ability of activating your specialized powers, I think Ben had mentioned, like you can't just like activate it right at the beginning of game 2. Like it even has like when you're utilizing your ultimate skills or ultimate abilities, it requires either a certain level of like life damage or kind of growth of abilities that you can utilize over time that then allow you to actually activate it. But it's also one of those, like, it's not just like you immediately hit and you get it. It requires you to actually time it, just like in a fighting game. You can't just activate your ultimate and it just wins you the game. You actually have to time it. You have to connect it with in the battles. And then another thing that I think Ben had mentioned too is like, it's not just about movement, but there's even like guarding and like being stunned or not, which is also part of fighting games, which they also capture that in a very cool way, where there's strict guarding, which is protecting you from direct damage, but there's also what they call a stun guard, which is not, it allows you to still take some damage, but you can still do it and activate your ability, which kind of works in fighting games when they have that mechanic in it, where you can kind of hit somebody or you can kind of take a hit, but make sure that you can still hit the other player, right? Where you're not always blocked out. Or some characters are specialized in like trying to make sure that the other player never has a chance to act in certain characters, or others that are just like, you can hit me as much as you want, but I'm always going to be able to do my action because I just always have a lot of protection, right? In that way. And I think that also fits in that mechanic of like, not every character is going to play the same way. So I love BattleCon.
John mentions it a lot and we don't play it enough.
We don't play it nearly as much as I'd like us to play it. But BattleCon.
So yeah, those were our top 5 2-player games. And we do want to just mention at this point that if any of these games caught your attention, you find them interesting, want to look into them, want to even try them out, you can probably find all our games on Amazon, I believe. And if not on Amazon, I mean, for sure, support your friendly local game store. They're even more likely going to have these games available. So yeah, these games are out there. So hope you get to try them. And so with that said, if you found this video interesting, helpful, hope you'll share it with people you play board games with, friends, family. Hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel and following us on Instagram at IGotBoardGame. Until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.